Well, hello again to our viewers, and we want to welcome you to another program of In Power Health. We want to thank you for continuing to join us for these very informative sessions. And today we want to continue our discussion, which we began the program before, dealing with the thyroid. We were actually, dealing at length with hypothyroidism and hyperthyroid. And of course, we want to continue along that line today. We want to look at the basal metabolic rate, the BMR, which we referred to in the last program, and of course the cholesterol connection and how that is how it all ties in to the thyroid and its function.
Yeah. A connection that we don't make at all, though.
Yeah.
Don't make at all.
Well, we don't make connections with a lot of things here in this country in what we call the medical field.
Well, remember the last time we were doing the basal metabolic rate test, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the things that he says is that
And who are we referring to again?
we were talking about. Just now, let me get back to the page.
Yeah.
Right. Dr. Sonkin.
Right.
The guys who were dealing with President Kennedy. So he was doing some work, and he said, in 1998, I recruited a PhD exercise physiologist to perform basal metabolic rate testing for my pain patients, because pain could be very much assigned to that the thyroid is running hypothyroid. Right? The doctor was very conscientious and tried to make certain that the patients were relaxed and proper procedures followed. He performed basal metabolic tests on 50 consecutive pain patients. All of these patients had normal TSH blood tests. My 50 patients' metabolism averaged about 15% below normal. A significant number of their metabolic rates were in the 30 to 40% below normal range. Several tests were above average as well. When a basic metabolic test was previously used to aid doctors in making the diagnosis of hypothyroidism, a test result of 10% less than the normal or lower was considered strongly indicative of the illness. I sent copies of the low basal metabolic tests to my patients' private care physicians, along with my diagnosis of hypothyroidism. Almost without exception, the test results as well as the patient's textbook symptomology were ignored. In other words, even though they had all the symptoms and the basic metabolic rate test, which is superior to the TSH, right? Their physicians simply felt that the TSH blood test could not be wrong. So you understand? You understand how science can get very convoluted?
That's right.
An unfortunate 80-year-old woman held a record low metabolic rate for all my patients. She initially was unable to stay awake during her office visits and summoned all her energy to travel to and from my office. This patient stated that she slept for most of the previous 10 years after a new doctor stopped her thyroid medication. The doctor said her blood test showed that she no longer needed thyroid hormones, despite the fact that she had been taking hormones for over 40 years and was doing quite well. The thyroid hormones were stopped. Her basic metabolic rate showed that her metabolic rate was 48% below the normal, even though her TSH was in the normal range. Right? The result for my patients and Dr. Sonkin patients indicated that the TSH does not measure the patient's metabolic rate. There are no studies in any of the medical literature showing that such a correlation exists. Dr. Sonkin's research also illustrates how normal thyroid blood tests do not measure the basic metabolic rate and are missing untold numbers of patients suffering from hypothyroidism. So he did a test, a graph, and it comes out very bad. 2/3 of the 60 to 100 patients, BMR increased from 10 to 35%. The vertical line represents a drop in patients' cholesterol following treatment. Half of the patients' cholesterol dropped 25 points down. A majority of the patients' hypothyroid symptoms improved. That's the ones we treated. In the first half of the 20th century, this I find very interesting. doctors were aware that elevated cholesterol was diagnostic of hypothyroidism. In other words, most of the time when you had a patient and the basic cholesterol rate went high,
yes.
that it was almost always normally a sign that the patient is hypothyroid. To the extent that in 1934, Dr. L.M. Huxtall of the Leahy Clinic found the relation of cholesterol to BMR was so sensitive that he suggested using serum cholesterol as a diagnostic test for hypothyroidism. Don't hear that again at all, right?
No.
Dr. Barnes checked cholesterol of all patients for 25 years. No, 5 or 10 patients.
Yes.
Right?
25 years have been doing
He
this
stated
study.
most younger patients and some adults may have normal or below normal cholesterol levels and still be in dire need of thyroid. My cholesterol and triglyceride levels were well within the normal ranges at age 36. During my third year of medical school, medical students practiced drawing each other's bloods while learning important lessons about blood tests. I believe my scores were normal because I exercised regularly and ate a healthy diet.
Yes.
At age 41, without any change in diet or exercise, my cholesterol level had risen to 300 and my triglycerides were 400. Ooh, you know.
Right.
My symptoms of hypothyroidism had markedly worsened. Fortunately, Dr. Sonkin placed me on T4 and T3 shortly thereafter, and my symptoms began to resolve. My elevated cholesterol and triglycerides normalized after 18 months of proper thyroid treatment. I believe the most comprehensive research regarding cholesterol and the failure of statin drugs to reduce heart attacks is found in Dr. Jerry Tennant's book, Healing is Voltage, the handbook. Well, you know who's going to get that book. I recommend this book to everybody. So what he's saying is that when you have a person and the cholesterol and triglycerides are high, that the first thing that you really should suspect is hypothyroidism.
Yes.
If you go measure the TSH, because the TSH is so inaccurate, that it probably wouldn't tell you that at all. So the best thing to do might be to put the person on a thyroid treatment and bring down the cholesterol. But there's another advantage to that.
Right.
When you bring down the person's cholesterol that way, one of the things that the thyroid hormone does when it comes up to scratch is that it improves the whole health of the heart.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that they're talking about inside here is that whenever they have persons on hormonal treatment for hypothyroid, they almost never ever die from a heart attack. That is almost a non-starter. That if they have an enlarged heart, that it will shrink the enlarged heart. It will take out the myxedema out of the heart and shrink the heart back to the normal size. So you get all advantages. On top of that, I think thyroid treatment is much cheaper than statins.
Yeah. I would suspect as much. So let me ask you this. Somebody suffering or they suspect or think they may be suffering with high levels of cholesterol. You would suggest that rather than go and do this test, which we found in the last program, this LDL reading is a guesstimation.
Yes.
Yeah? You think that they should just they should check the thyroid first. It will be a good thing.
But you can't check the thyroid by TSH because
no, I'm not suggesting TSH at all. I don't know. How can you or have it examined or something?
A fairly good test would be, and I give my patients this to do whenever I suspect that they have any thyroid problems.
Yeah.
You get a good reading thermometer for measuring body temperature,
right?
Where you have a nice wide range, right? And I let them get up in the morning before you start moving. You lie in your bed, you have your thermometer right there.
Yes.
You just stick it and you stick it on the arm, and you stay right there for 10 minutes. And then you take out the thermometer and you measure it. And whatever is the temperature, you get it. You
record it.
You record it down.
Right. Yeah.
So, and you do that not for one day. You do it for about at least a week. And then you bring it for me. So we do an average.
So you do it every day for a week?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we do an average. And we check
at that time in the morning.
We check to see any highs and lows.
Right.
If it is about a degree down, I'm trying to from half a degree. Say a degree down. then the person is definitely hypothyroid. If they're degree up, then they're hyperthyroid.
Hyper.
Hyper, yes.
Hyper. Right.
You know, and it is very interesting to watch. You know, that's fairly accurate.
Okay.
In fact, lots of times there are people and all their thyroid reading looking good, but they come in the office and by the time they get into me, their hands cold, their feet cold. This place so cold.
Yes, yes.
Have people in the office here, they sit behind the desk and they have the air conditioner up to 24 and it's still cool. You know, that's called, I say, no blood.
Yeah, no blood, no blood, no blood.
But essentially, what you're saying is that with the thyroids down, the thyroid affects the basic metabolism, so it affects the temperature of the body. Because the temperature, the human body is really fantastic, you know, to keep a temperature between 97.8 and 98.3. You know, that's really all over the world, everywhere.
Yes, everybody, yes, I've been with,
I don't know of any industrial systems that could keep that temperature like that. You know, so when you look at that, you say, hey, this is very interesting, because one of the things about when you increase the thyroid, when the thyroid hormones increase and it increases the temperature, is that it successfully burns fat. So you begin to realize that one of the causes of obesity is a low thyroid reading. Right? That's why lots of times, you know, sometimes you give...
But what's the link though? What's the link?
What do you mean, between the thyroid...
Obesity?
Well, if you...
Because it might answer a question for a lot of obese persons.
Listen.
And you know, we have an increase in that in
if the thyroid
Trinidad and Tobago.
If the thyroid is running
other
low.
parts of the world.
If the thyroid is running low,
right?
It doesn't melt the fat. The metabolic rate of the body is low. But besides that, don't forget that a low thyroid also creates myxedema, which is that it gets into the cells and it fills it up with this mucus,
and water,
right? And water.
Yes.
So imagine you have your cells and your cells have 20% more water and mucus than it should have, right? Figure your weight. If your weight is 180, add another 30 pounds on that. You just put on 30 or 40 pounds right there.
Well, I recorded 201 last night.
That's good for you.
201.2, I think.
So you begin to see the whole thing. On top of that, whenever your body come up to function with the right thyroid things, the heart takes up the right power beat with the right pulse and everything. So your oxygenation of your system goes up dramatically. I mean, we just touch two things, right? And you begin to see. On top of that, it will drop your cholesterol, and you'll drop your cholesterol to the normal level, not to a level lower. On top of that, when you're using statins rub the body of CoQ10. CoQ10 is very important in the Krebs cycle for keeping the muscles working good. So I have seen a very peculiar thing where you have a person and they have a bad heart, and the doctor put them on the most powerful statin drugs that you have. Right? What are you doing? You're trying to kill the person?
Yeah.
Trying to kill the person. Because if you're interfering with the production of CoQ10 and you don't put them on extra CoQ10 and you send them outside there, so now the heart is functioning even more improperly because the body doesn't have enough CoQ10 now to supply the heart for it to beat properly. And you can't understand why the person deteriorates. You know, science.
Yes, and I think these things are done deliberately.
No,
why would somebody who has, purportedly, studied medical science or whatever you do in your training and stuff like that, go outside and see a person come and know that thing and give them something
you know why?
that will cause their heart to deteriorate even further.
You know why? We don't make connections.
Well, that's how we started the program. We don't make connections.
We don't make connections.
Yeah.
And let me explain what I mean by making connections. Just now we were talking about the basic. Remember last week when we were talking about the woman who came with the high blood pressure.
Yeah.
And I put her on the beach.
Yes.
And I told you that
that was a nice scene, boy.
I did a special technique.
Yes.
Where I took all the pronouns out of my speech, which automatically made her mind.
What do you call it? Auto-linguistic programming?
Neuro-linguistic.
Okay. I got the linguistic part right.
So what it means is that the minute you start to speak to the person, if I say, driving down the highway, bad traffic, right, sweating, Lord. You're inside your car already, right? No pronouns.
Every morning.
No
Every
pronouns.
morning.
Everybody who listening to this show,
Yes.
just go
Listen.
outside and say,
Listen.
"Mess, stop that
Yes,
nonsense.
yes.
Don't do that."
Yes.
Right?
I was telling somebody in the gym, he said, I'm looking for things to do in the morning when I go down because I find it so counterproductive.
We know I used to do
1.5 to 2 hours.
You know what I
mean, it's
you know what I would
ridiculous.
do long time? I have Pavarotti and
yeah.
you know, Stravinsky and all them guys. And I put that on and I turn it on, going down the road. I ain't letting that outside come inside that car at all.
Yes, yes, yeah.
At all. And I remember once I going down the road and a guy gave me a bad drive. So I have a pad in the car. So, you know, when I give him a bad drive and he go on thinking he get up.
Yeah.
And my line coming down. I coming up next to him. So he's coming next to him. And I roll down the window. His window was down. So I look at him, and as I look at him, I could see him going. So they say,
Get smaller.
I say, you didn't get nothing last night. He got me. He said, don't go there now. So I start to laugh.
Yeah.
And he started to laugh.
Yeah,
He said, man, I'm sorry I gave you a bad drive
Yeah,
just now. You know,
yeah,
boy,
yeah.
you just get vexed coming down the road.
Yeah.
You know, I said, it's all right, man. You know, have a nice day. He said, you too. So by the time he says, how you know to tell him that? I said, well, he ain't give me a bad drive. He's just coming down the road and he in a bad mood.
Yes, yes, yes.
And everybody's been in a bad mood. And what we do is we just take it personally. But you shouldn't take it personally. You should just leave it alone. I say, hey, nice bad drive, boy.
Nice bad drive. An oxymoron if ever there
Yes.
was one.
Now you've confused a lot of the
You don't let me have to define that.
So you had stat, right? So he turns around and he says, well, you know, the most comprehensive research regarding cholesterol and the failure of statin drugs to reduce heart attacks, because that is what it is given for. Now, if cholesterol carries nutrients, and sometimes I see some people and they're taking cholesterol medicine until it goes right down. And then they come to you 6 months later and say, my arteries all clogged up. And they can't understand.
Understand why. Yeah.
I couldn't understand until I begin to realize, hey, if the person is hypothyroid and you drop the cholesterol down to 100, right? Then what you mean is the ability to carry nutrients to and from the cells goes dramatically and the person is hypothyroid.
Yeah.
Of course, the whole
Yeah.
lining of the arteries gone crazy because that is what low thyroid does. It creates some myxedema inside the artery and you start to get arteriosclerosis. Whoa, all the answers.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
I feel good when I get it coming together like that. Begin to understand why things happen. I always
Yes,
say,
yeah.
why it is everybody eating hydrogenated oil. Some people will get sick and others won't. You have to go and dig. And I thank Dr. Gordon for giving me this book. You know, you just put all the pieces
Together.
started
Yes,
coming together.
Yes, yes, yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So he says there's a 24-hour T3 test where you measure the T3 of what is excreted over a period of 24 hours, right? And he says that is a fairly good test. you
Right.
know. The guy who invented it is Jacques Hertoge, and he's a third-generation Belgian endocrinologist. Developed an accurate test to detect hypothyroidism. It is called the 24-hour urine T3 test and measures how much active form of thyroid T3 is excreted in 24 hours. The Hertoge method of testing and treatment is desperately needed around the world. You know, so
I had a question that I wanted to ask you, even in the last program and so on. The thyroid, can it deplete over time?
yeah, of course.
Okay.
You know,
Just on other parts of
things
the...
that could deplete is if you don't have enough iodine, because you
Right.
notice you're talking about T4, T3, T2,
Right.
and all of them is tyrosine and iodine. And if you're not getting the iodine, you're not eating any seafood, you're not, you know, and you're not get, then you run iodine shortage, you go
Right.
hypothyroid immediately.
Right. So one of the ways of recognizing that that is happening to you is when you see all of those symptoms that we alluded to before, the irritability, the tiredness, the lack of energy, all of those things.
For women, sometimes excessive menstrual bleeding.
Yeah,
That has just given me a whole insight into that.
Yes, yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And,
And now will that be for women who are seeing their normal cycle, you know?
No, the cycle could be irregular too.
Right, right. But what I'm saying, for menopausal women, for example, could that bleeding occur for them as
Not
well?
for ordinary women?
Yeah, yeah.
You're a person who is not hypothyroid?
No. I'm talking about, you know, someone experiencing all the.
Or if they have all of that right away, you'd say, hey, this is. Whereas before I'd be trying to connect the dots differently.
Yes.
Now there's another aspect of
Yeah.
it. The person could be running hypothyroid.
Yeah. And so you see that over time and you experience all the symptoms and so on. But what do you do to.
You let them do a basal
Correct
temperature test
Right,
just to
the
give
same-
you an
okay,
idea.
The same BMR?
Yeah. And then put them on some iodine or something and get them going, you know.
Okay.
See if that will pick them up.
Yeah.
If you had to get them to get hormones, well, you probably had to go and talk to one of your doctor communicants. You know,
To get
say, hey,
hormones.
look, I need somebody.
Okay, so when will
might
when will the hormones become necessary then? When
At the point where they have
Lugal solution and so on would
wouldn't that alone wouldn't suffice
wouldn't
to bring
suffice.
up the hypothyroid.
But then that would mean that you're in a pretty bad state at that point in time. Yeah.
I have a lot of people in a pretty bad state. A lot of women. So, we're going along. And then we go back now, and we go back to this thing about cholesterol. Because there's so much misunderstanding. And you begin to realize that when you start to read, and incidentally, when I got this book, you had a whole set of reference to Broda Barnes and Charlotte Barnes, right? Who are the people who did a lot of work on that. So I went and I got all the books. And most of it is out of print. But I have my good friend there who chases them down for me. And I'll show you something in this book. It's a second-hand book. To Harwood's, the bigger and better developments, Broda Barnes. Broda and Charles.
Okay.
Hey, I get an autograph book.
Yes, man. You're in the game, as they say.
Yes. So he said to me, I got it at a good price, you know. He said when I opened it, I saw that it was autographed. I said, wow, that's nice.
Wow.
So listen to what she says.
So this now here we're making the connection between
We do cholesterol, right? She says, she's talking about how they've maligned cholesterol. She says, when the sperm from man goes forth in search of the egg from the woman to create a new individual, each of these singly, highly specialized cells carry its own supply of cholesterol. Each sperm carries its own supply of cholesterol. After union of these two cells, the cholesterol content of the mother's blood increases by about 50%. There is need for more of this substance since each of the billions of new cells constituting the fetus will contain cholesterol at term. If this compound were at toxic level as toxic to the blood vessels as alleged, the fetus would have a heart attack before the baby saw the light of day. Such is not the case.
Yes.
Of the common foods, eggs contain the highest concentration of this material. Nature has guaranteed a constant content of cholesterol in the egg. Even feeding hens a diet of cholesterol free does not change the composition of the egg. So the chicken will take a lot of different foodstuffs and turn it into cholesterol.
Yes,
The human body is a marvelous thing.
Yes.
All of the cholesterols necessary for the initiation of a new chick must be included in the egg, since the shell isolates the embryo from the environment until hatching. Right? However, hatching chicks contain more cholesterol than does the ordinary egg.
Yes.
Right? Indicating that the new tissues of the chick are synthesizing this necessary substance during incubation. It is apparent that this compound is essential for growth of tissue. Cholesterol is here to stay. We should be spending more time studying its importance instead of attempting to reduce its concentration. The other thing that we have is they say that saturated fats is is what is caused arteriosclerosis. That is total, utter scientific nonsense. You know,
Ball the dash, as we
so
say
many
sometimes.
people have been saying that for so long scientifically.
Yeah.
And the fellows who push in the hydrogenated oil don't want that thing in, you know. They say that with the introduction of polyunsaturated fats, hydrogenated fats, the rate of heart attacks and strokes went up dramatically. People who eat the lard and they don't get plugged arteries. Now I know once your thyroid is working and you're getting good animal fats. So he has in one part of the book there he has the molecular chain for both things. And the molecular chain for polyunsaturated has a double bond carbon in both ends. And he says when that bond breaks, it is liable to unite, making a lot of toxic chemicals.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas a straight saturated fat molecule doesn't do that. You know.
So once the thyroid is working properly, then you know it breaks up the unsaturated fats. Yes. Okay. All right.
Listen to this. You get really, really interesting. For years it has been known that the liver could synthesize new cholesterol. This organ was considered a major source of endogenous production. This theory has been disproved by the recent work of Wilson. During the digestion of a fatty meal, the liberated fats are insoluble in water or blood serum. It's insoluble, the fats. The cells of the intestinal tract synthesize cholesterol whose combination with the fat renders a soluble union that can be transported through the blood to the storage depots or to tissues burning the fats as fuel. You hear that? That in order for the body to absorb fat, you have to have cholesterol being made by the cells in the lining of the intestines in order to get the fat combined with it so that it can carry it into the body. It's the same way when the liver has energy foods, you know, fats and things like that, and it has to carry it to the cell. It is what you call the good cholesterol. What good cholesterol? The LDL carries it to the cells. So the LDL is not a bad cholesterol. The LDL is the workhorse.
Yes.
So how come you end up calling it bad cholesterol? I have an idea of why.
Yes.
Let me tell you. Because you couldn't measure the LDL, you couldn't separate it, right? And they noticed that some LDL sticks up the arteries. They call LDL bad cholesterol. It's not until they succeeded in separating the LDL 2, 3, 4, 5. They learned that 4 and 5 is heavy density, and since it's heavy density, that is what sticks up the arteries, and that is made from hydrogenated oil.
Right.
The other LDL is very necessary for your life.
Right. But we don't get that kind of reading in doing a thing.
20 years from now, when
Actually, you have to write that book, you know. People calling for it, man. You have to elucidate this population.
20 years from now, when you'll get it.
Yes.
But the point about it is that when you take a statin drug, it lowers all the LDL. So imagine you running...
mash up the good one.
So you imagine you running nice and healthy.
Yeah.
For years, my cholesterol is about 200, 210, 250. I measure my cholesterol. Doctor tells me, he says, I say, don't give me that. And I use that nice word
yes.
about how to lower my cholesterol, you know. My cholesterol is at its ideal position. That says the drug companies lower it from 240 to 230 to 220 to 210 to 200, and now they're thinking of going down some more. Because every time they drop it 10 points, they make $12 billion more in profits. Wow. It's a good business.
Yes.
Has nothing to do with human beings.
So, or their welfare, or their well-being.
So I'm exercising and watching my diet. My cholesterol is 220. I feel absolutely fantastic. You're going to give me a cholesterol medicine now. I'm going to lower it to about 190. So I've just taken 15% of my cholesterol.
Yes.
My cholesterol is working nice.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Just because somebody tell me that I should take it down.
Yeah. Or it should be this. It should be reading this and
you say that cholesterol, high cholesterol causes clogged arteries. The Eskimos who live in the north, away from things and eat the seal and the whale and things like that, they say that the normal cholesterol for them is between 280 and 350. And who has plugged arteries?
Nobody. Because
they live by the sea, they're always eating seaweed and things like that. So the thyroids and things always up to scratch. And they take all the You know the word Eskimo means he who eats it raw, right? So whenever they whenever they kill a whale or a seal or something, they cut it. They dig up the soil to the permafrost.
Yes.
And they wrap it and they put it on the permafrost. And
So
they
you have
cover
no
it back.
you have no shortage of sushi up there.
Well, listen. So what happens now is that they leave it underneath there for 4 or 5 weeks, and it ferments, it rots.
Yes.
Right? And the guy says that when you take it out, it doesn't look like meat anymore. It looks like a kind of cheese when you cut it. He said, no, it tastes all right, but it's to get it past your nose because it don't smell too good.
Yeah.
So I'm reading a book there, and the fellow says that the Anglican bishop goes up there to his diocese. Bad joints. They had to tow him in on the sledge. so he goes in and he asks the chief, he said, where's your doctor? He says, what? He said, doctor. He said, who's that?
We don't have that.
We don't have that here. Right? So after a couple of weeks of watching everybody, he said, well, everybody's so healthy, nobody ain't have pain. So he asked the guy, he said, what does he eat? The guy said, you really want to? So he's taking. So he decided he would eat what they eat because they're healthy. They said 2.5 years later, when they called him back into the city, he ran his own dog sledge out. Man who was crippled from arthritis ran his own dog sledge out. Totally fit. Lean and mean.
Yeah.
You know?
A lean, mean machine.
Right. So you realize that he says, so the tract synthesizes the cholesterol whose combination with fats renders a soluble union that can be transported through the blood to the storage depot. It would be unhandy for the intestinal tract to send a message to the liver for a new supply of cholesterol to combine with the fats. The fats would be polluting the intestinal cells until the cholesterol arrived. How much more efficient for the intestinal cells to produce instantly the exact amount of cholesterol needed as the fats are absorbed. Where you ever see they're telling you that it is the intestinal walls that does make the cholesterol in order to do the same thing that it does from the liver to the cell, which is to take it through the lining of the intestine and carry it into the bloodstream so that it gets to the liver. You don't see that kind of information.
I think we need to do a program on this whole cholesterol issue
Diets
because it is so misunderstood.
Diets of animal origin furnish the individual with some exogenous cholesterol. On the other hand, vegetarians must synthesize all of the compounds needed by his tissues. Since vegetable fats are more soluble in water than animal fats, less cholesterol will be synthesized in the intestinal mucosa during absorption of the vegetable fat. Consequently, the cholesterol in the blood will be lower, because they're making it all themselves. It is not the cholesterol in the diet that raises the serum cholesterol of the meat eaters, but it is the cholesterol synthesized in the intestinal walls for absorption of the fat in the meat or eggs. If as much as 25 grams of pure cholesterol is added to the diet of a vegetarian, very little is absorbed. The majority is passed out through the feces. The significance of this observation will be discussed in more detail in a subsequent chapter. In mammals, the cholesterol content of numerous tissues varies widely. The highest concentration is found in the adrenal glands. So the adrenal glands, over 7% of the fresh weight is due to the substance. Why? The adrenal glands are extremely active.
Yes.
You get your adrenaline and cortisol and all kinds of things from that. So, you know, in the brain and spinal cord, about 2% of its weight is due to it. The kidney, spleen, and the liver follows in that order with less than 0.5%. The blood contains a smaller amount than the liver, while the major organs and muscles have the least concentration. Now listen to this. Very little cholesterol is found in the bones, but 10 times this quantity is present in the marrow inside the bones. Right? The marrow is continually forming new blood cells, and cholesterol is important in the process of growth. So you see how extremely important cholesterol is in anything that is growing, in anything that has totally high activity. And you're going to give a person something to depress all that. So they're seeing all kinds of crazy side effects coming up now with the statin drugs. Of course, a lot of it gets
muted.
At the time of birth, the human tissues contain the same concentration of cholesterol as the corresponding tissues in the adult, except for the brain, the adrenals, and the blood, in which smaller quantities are found. Without digestion of fats in the gut, the fetal blood has not been flooded with newly synthesized cholesterol. The adrenal is relatively inactive in the fetus and apparently does not have the demand for cholesterol as seen postpartum. The quantity of this compound in the brain is added after birth during the development of the functions of the organs. During the growth period, the brain can synthesize its own cholesterol, but in an adult, this potential is lost. The cholesterol in the brain is relatively stable and is seldom replaced. The enzymes necessary for synthesis disappears. Although the adult brain and the spinal cord makes up only 2% of the total body weight, they contain 23% of the total cholesterol. Since there is very little wear and tear requiring replacement of this substance, it is considered to be part of the supporting structure rather than to be concerned with metabolic activity of the central nervous system. Some feel that it may be insulation for the multitude of nerve fibers in order to avoid short-circuiting, similar to the use of rubber on electrical wires, the insulation, you know. So you find also that the cholesterol that makes the fat soluble, the skin contains 10% of the total cholesterol. Why? In this organ, a definite function is known. Sunlight acts on the cholesterol in the skin, producing vitamin D, which is absolutely fantastic hormone-like substance rather than a vitamin substance. The skin bears the brunt of most wounds. The cholesterol is essential in the growth of replacement tissues. Excess worn out cholesterol is excreted by the liver. Most of it is converted into bile acids and bile salts, which appear in the bile. These compounds are essential for digestion and absorption of foods in the intestinal tract. Helps to break down some of the fats too. Some free cholesterol is present in the bile. If needed, it may be recycled. Thus, another function of the cholesterol is to furnish bile salts. So you see, and bile is necessary for neutralizing the acidity in your food after it gets poured on with an hydrochloric acid, and it's also necessary for the breakdown of fats. So what you're saying is that if you lower that too low, that cholesterol too low, then you end up with your digestive system being in problems.
Yes. Well, that's
and you know, you could go down the vicious cycle. You know, cholesterol is the starting point for the manufacture of adrenal cortical hormones, so essential to life and emergencies. If the adrenals are removed, in a few days, death follows due to low blood pressure, a lack of nutrition to the cells, and a lack of proper mineral levels in the blood. So right away, give you a very good idea of what the adrenals, main things that some of the adrenals do. It is the constant function of the adrenals to maintain homeostasis, the constant levels of nourishment, and a constant environment for the cells in the body. Without this regulation of the constituents in the blood, a minor illness would upset the balance and death would ensue. Cholesterol is essential for the body to meet stress and to survive emergencies. You know, and so it goes on. So you begin to realize that we know 10% of what the cholesterol is doing. But we go and we mess it with because somebody came up with the idea that cholesterol plugs arteries. It doesn't. It's too valuable.
A lot of misconception.
God is not a stupid being. You know, it's man that is the stupid being. And we keep saying that, and you know, the doubters will have their doubts.
Yes.
So that follows the whole evolution of what we're talking about with the cholesterol. So you begin to understand that in the early 1900s they were saying that there is a direct correlation between high cholesterol and hypothyroidism.
Yes.
When you raise the hypothyroidism back to normal functioning, the thyroid back to normal functioning, the cholesterol goes back down to its normal level. So it's a straight thing.
Yes,
that's
it's a balance. Yeah,
we've taken it and made it into such a crazy science with statin drugs and all kinds of things, when in actual fact it is a very simple ratio between the metabolic rate of the body and the storage of the things that you're going to metabolize. That's it's done.
Yes.
It's very simple. So that basically is it. But when you come now and you say, okay, one of the things that happens when you raise the metabolic rate of the body is that the body needs more oxygen. So one of the things that happens is that it strengthens the heartbeat, makes the heart more powerful.
Yeah, yes.
And in making the heart more powerful, and the lungs more efficient, you get a greater transfer of oxygen into the blood. Now, one of the things that they're saying in the book is they say that if you have a person and they have a heart attack, you would think, well, okay, I could go and give them, you know, thyroid medicine and it would be good, but you can't. Like the doctor is saying here that if you're doing that, then you'd have to get some nitric oxide and feed that into the system so you get a good dilation on the arteries for a little while. Give the body time to recover. And then start the person on a quarter grain of thyroid, desiccated thyroid. And then after you do that for 2 or 3 weeks, then you go to half a grain. So to get up to, say, if you're going up to 2 grains.
And what's the dosage? You know, what's the frequency with which you can give, or is it depends on the case, or on the person's?
Nice, you know, I photocopied it for you. Nice.
You have all your bases covered?
Yes. We have a thing there on the grains, and what the grains mean.
Right.
Let's see if we find it.
Is it this?
Which one?
Okay.
No, trying to get. No, I have a paper there that this what the actual meaning of grains mean. Check and see if you have it somewhere there. See that inside there?
Okay.
Nice TSA.
Thyroid pathways. We have.
Where did I have that?
Basal metabolic rate. Okay.
There is an amount here where they describe exactly. All right, I think I have it. All right.
Okay.
Conversion ratios of thyroid hormones. Right? Conversion of grains to desiccated thyroid. 1 grain is 38 micrograms of T4 and 9 micrograms of T3. Right? 0.25 grain is 9.5 micrograms and 2.2 micrograms. 2 grains is 76 micrograms and 80 micrograms. So you understand how powerful the thyroid hormone is, because if you say that you want to start at half a grain, you're talking at 19 micrograms.
Yeah.
Not milligrams, you know,
micrograms.
Yes. So there's thousandth of a gram, right? And that alone will change your whole body.
Yes.
If you work up to 3 grains, you're up to 114 micrograms and 27 micrograms. Okay? So that's how you measure the grains. Desiccated thyroid contains glandular thyroid and is measured in milligrams. 1 grain of desiccated thyroid is about 64.5 milligrams and 38 micrograms of T4 and 9 micrograms of T3. Armour thyroid, which is one of the main ones that they sell in the States, dosages are slightly different because they reference 1 grain to 60 milligrams. However, the stated amounts of T4 and T3 are the same. So even though they're using 1 grain, it's the whole thyroid desiccated and not the amount of micrograms that T4 and T3 is. Synthetic T4 and T3 are bioidentical synthetic hormones that are derived from sugar beets. T4 and T3 are measured in micrograms. Pharmacies must use filler to accurately measure microgram dosages. Many of my patients who had autoimmune thyroid illnesses became allergic to the most common fillers, which is named methyl cellulose. It is derived from pine and is allergenic. I recommend using potato starch, acidophilus, or Avicel for fillers because they are less allergenic. I found that calcium carbonate also works as well, in spite of the fact that the calcium is supposed to block absorption of thyroid hormones. A number of countries, including Brazil, have never had access to desiccated thyroid. A doctor from Brazil is a patient of mine. He read my first book and came to my clinic in Arizona. His health has since improved since he began desiccated thyroid. So that gives you an idea of the weight of the amount of micrograms that you use when you say you use 1 grain, 2 grains, 3 grains.
Okay.
You know?
So why do you think, Doc, that some countries do not have access to the desiccated thyroid?
The power of the people who set up the rules, you know.
And that means?
That means that they set up the rules and they say that is forbidden, you know. And everything that you have people who say you can't do this, you can't do that.
But if it has been proven to be so effective in treating this whole question of hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, why is it not more commonly available to people?
When they went to put the TSH measurement out, there were a whole set of doctors who wrote and said, don't do that. It is not an accurate reading. They still put it in. Okay? You have, remember we did a program here where we talked about the professor emeritus from the Purdue University writing the Secretary of Agriculture complaining about what genetically modified foods is doing.
The GSM.
And he said that he had the backing of over 200 of the top scientists in America. Nobody listened to it. Being that if you're scientifically right doesn't mean that anybody will listen. It's what is expedient.
Yes, yes,
You know?
yes.
What is expedient to the person who has the ability to say yes or no. So in everything that you do, there's a sense of expediency. I rather suspect that one of the reasons why you have a situation where you have a lot of hypothyroid people, you have cholesterol problems, you have heart problems, and you're saying that that could be easily cured with thyroid, that you could take down a swollen heart easily with extra desiccated thyroid. And it gets buried. It gets buried because it suits the parties who are selling statin drugs or otherwise to do that. So you just have to live with it.
Right. But I think that it's really a tragedy of sorts that we don't have these remedies available to us. I mean, not only here in Trinidad and Tobago, but other parts of the world, since the learnings have shown that they are effective in treating this problem. So you're saying that if anybody has a desiccated, not desiccated, but thyroid problems and so on, the answer will be in the Lugal solution or taking some.
The Lugal solution only provides the iodine part of the thing. Remember, you have tyrosine, and you have to make the tyrosine grab hold of the iodine in certain configurations in order to do that. So therefore, that's what the thyroid does. So you have to have all the components, or preferably just the nutrients itself.
Yes.
So that it's very easy for it to absorb it and reuse it easily. Okay. The other thing about it is besides the dropping of the cholesterol, is that because it takes down, and then we started mentioning that, because it takes down the myxedema and it takes away the hardening of the arteries when you raise back the thyroid level, is that the blood pressure over a period of months gradually comes down back to its normal rate.
Yes.
So here you have a situation where the heart is beginning to work much stronger, but instead of it pushing up the blood pressure goes down because the arteries are getting back the flexibility.
Yes. Could a thyroid that is out of whack create problems like insomnia and so on?
Yeah, of course. Where's the list? This is a list of some of the things that people who have low thyroid activity have. And if you look here, you'll see insomnia. Insomnia, right? Cold intolerance, headaches, depression, menstrual problems, brittle and ridged nails, dry skin, fatigue, high blood pressure, tension, hair loss.
And you're saying, doctor, that if a person is experiencing one or several of these symptoms, including the depression I see here, well, of course, we talk about the cold intolerance, the high blood pressure, constipation, constipation, heart disease, of course, cancer, and so on, and that you suggest that they go and have a test done or
that would be the thing for you to check if you have hypothyroid. The problem is whether the doctor will listen to you when you're going to say, listen, I think I'm hypothyroid. You send you for a TSH reading. And say, nothing wrong with you.
Yes.
So you're back to square one.
Okay. Well, it seems as though we've really taken this topic to shreds in terms of helping to elucidate our audience on hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism, some of the effects of it, what can cause it, and how we can remedy it, because it seems as though this And it seems to be, as we have discovered, that we have some new learning on it.
But
and
you see how many things are interconnected.
Yes,
To
yes.
just that one thing, which is
Yeah.
a low thyroid.
Thyroid,
We didn't
yeah.
do too much with the hyper because you don't find a lot of people hyperthyroid.
hyper. So it's more the
Tend to find them
hypo.
more
Yeah,
hypo.
yes.
The
yeah.
stress and the toxins and everything
Yeah,
tend to
yeah.
carry you down rather
Down,
than
rather
carry
than
you up.
Yes, yes.
So we
yeah.
spend a lot more time talking about the hypo aspect of it, and that's the whole thing of that. But
Okay.
the other aspect that you have with this is that when you look at it, you begin to understand the role that hormones play in keeping you steady. You remember
Steady,
we
yeah.
said that when the guy gave the woman thyroid hormones to try and ease up the weight, the pain in the arthritis, and it reached a certain level it wouldn't go, that he went and he strengthened the adrenals. And we did a little thing on adrenal
Adrenal
fatigue
summit, yeah.
a few
Yeah.
weeks back.
Oh, yes.
And you say, hey, that's the other thing, because we live in a society of stress, very high levels of stress, very high levels of eating on the run and all kinds of
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And what we do is we stress the adrenals.
Adrenals, yes.
And it is strange that these two things work very synergistically together. If you take down the adrenals, then inevitably what you also do is you also cause hypothyroidism.
Yeah, yeah.
So lots of times when you're tonifying the thyroid, you notice that you have to go and tonify the adrenals
That's
too.
as well.
Otherwise, the success that you're looking for. But that's in cases of where the person is dramatically deteriorated.
Yes, yeah. Great.
But I think you'll find that I would say probably 50% of the people who are hypothyroid are probably adrenal deficient too.
Which has to do with kidnees and so on.
Yeah, with
Yes,
with your
with
adrenal
your
system.
Adrenal system.
Yeah. Which is the
Great.
two little glands on top.
Yes.
On
yeah.
top
Good. Well, again, we want to, as we've sort of wrapped that up, we want to thank our viewers very much for joining us for this program of Empower Health. We want to urge you, as I keep saying, if you have any questions, comments, anything on the topics that we have discussed in the last two programs or so, or any of the programs that we have, the topics we've touched on in the past. If you have any questions or comments, you can email docmyers@yahoo.com, and of course we'll be all too happy to pass on the information to you on the program, as well as our favorite programs. I know a lot of people have been asking for them. They are available here at the office, so you can call 645-8625, and you can find out what's there, and avail yourself of your own copy of this program. It's well worth the getting it, and so that you can have a ready reference to the material and to some of the topics that we've discussed here on Empower Health. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for joining us for this program, and we will see you around for another edition of Empower Health.